Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day number 702, 702, Saturday, February 23rd, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's go ahead and get to it. Let's see here. So, we'll start with the follow-up on the Jussie Smollett, the fearmonger, and see what's going on with that. So, of course, most of you have heard now that he goes back to, I guess, after he gets out of jail or after his arrest. So he goes back to the set where they shoot his TV show, and apparently he's been crying and all kinds of stuff. And he's still sticking with the story, telling his cast and crew to trust in him, believe in him. He's not lying. He's telling the truth. I mean, so this guy is clearly in a major state of denial. Now, apparently, this man, you look like you've been crying. I don't think you're right to do the scene right now. Go home and come back. Apparently, I don't know, maybe he came home, maybe he went back, I don't know. They're going to shoot the scenes anyway. But, so this is how that went down. But I want to focus now because most of this is pretty much over. I mean, you know, we heard the police chief, we heard the DA, they laid out the charges. I think it's all very clear. It's everything we've been talking about. I don't think we have to go through all that again. I think most of you are up on that. We know what he did. And now and of course we know why he did it. He had several motivations. Obviously, it's said that he didn't think he was being paid enough. He thought he would get more money if he would paint himself as a victim. He would get some sympathy. Maybe he wanted to drive this issue. Some say it's tied to this Kamala Harris bill about the no lynching or whatever. We even got people out there suggesting he's related to Kamala Harris or has some sort of a connection to Kamala Harris. It's probably true. We know that. I don't know if he's related to her, but I know that obviously they have a connection. She's, appeared with him, I do believe, in public before, as has Mad Maxine Waters and other Democratic politicians. So this stuff is all just kind of fluff to me. I'm not paying much attention to it. I'm aware it's out there. I want to focus on the bigger issue here. So now that we have pretty much all the facts in, for the most part, at least we have had the facts read to us by the police chief and the DA. Okay, so if we're going with what the Chicago police have told us, that's kind of where I'm working from here. So based on that, what is it that Jussie Smollett did exactly? What did he do? Well, the short answer is that he faked a hate crime. He faked a hate crime. That is pretty much the narrative right now. Smollett faked a hate crime. Yes, he did. He put together a hate crime, which was a fake, a fraud, and now it's been exposed. Okay, very well. But there's something more important here that he did that's not really being talked about by, certainly on the left, and not even much of the major media at all. I mean, from my perspective, here's how I look at it. He didn't just commit I assume this is a crime, a fake hoax, and it is a crime. If he just would have created a fake hoax on Twitter, that would have been one thing. But once the police got involved and they started spending, taxpayer money and police resources on his allegation, which would be a crime, an assault on him. Then it became more. It became an actual crime. If they decide to go for, obviously he used this letter, he mailed this letter, that involves a federal crime because he used the U.S. Postal Service to, use them to carry out his crime. Okay, so we can establish what the crimes were, or the crimes that are being alleged. He put up a fake hoax, which is a crime, because of the way it played out, because of the resources that were put into play. Okay, so he committed this hate crime, but the other thing that he did is he actually committed a hate crime. He didn't just commit a fake hoax hate crime. He, at the same time, he did create a hoax fake, a hate crime. But at the same time, he created a real hate crime. He created a hate crime. Look at what he did. Who was the target? Who was the target of Jussie Smollett's attack? Now, you could say the target was his employer because he wanted them to pay him more money. You could say the target was everybody because he wanted everybody to have sympathy for him. His target could have been various other things. But one target we know for sure is white guys, and especially white guys who support Trump. Because that's the people he blamed for the attack. And if you look at his interviews that he did on TV, most of his narrative is about those guys. What those guys, who those guys are, what those guys did, what those guys think, and that sort of thing. So he did have a target here. His target was the white guys who support Trump. They were targeted here. They were the victims of his hate crime. Now, it's very possible that this could have played out another way. It's very possible that people could have went out and started attacking, which is already happening, obviously, attacking Trump supporters or white guys wearing MAGA hats or white guys, just for the hell of it, because of the prank that Jussie Smollett played. So there was a real target, there was a real victim here, and it would be white guys who support Trump, specifically. So based on that, I would think that the first thing that we should expect from Smollett, the fearmonger, is an apology. An apology to all the white guys who support Trump, and Trump supporters in general. There should be an apology to the people who he targeted, which would be me and many of you. And it's not just males, it's, I assume, women too. Because the real target of Jussie is the opposition, Trump. So it's Trump supporters and white guys with MAGA hats or white guys who like Trump, sort of as proxies, but the real end target is Trump. So really, Trump and his supporters were really the target of Jussie Smollett. They were the target. They were the victims. But you don't hear anybody reporting on the victims, do you? Now, I haven't watched Fox in a couple of days. I'm not sure what their take on it is, but we can certainly assume that MSNBC, CNN, and all the rest on the left are certainly not going to stop and recognize that there was a real victim here, and the victim was not Jussie. The victim, he was the perpetrator. The victims here are Trump supporters and Trump. They were the targets of Jussie Smollett, the fearmonger. And so I just wanted to point that out because I haven't heard anybody else point that out, but that's the way it looks to me. There was a target of his attack. And again, you could say it was his employer, you could say it was this or that, but clearly the main driving issue with him was he wanted to stir up some shit against white guys who support Trump, people with MAGA hats, Trump supporters, and ultimately it was meant to hurt Trump. That's what it's all about. And I don't hear anybody calling for the fearmonger, Jussie, to apologize to his victims. Nor do I think he would. You have a lot of people talking about the fact that they think he's going to get let off the hook very lightly. I have no doubt he's got a lot of powerful political people who are going to be trying to influence that decision. But I would be careful, very, very careful, if they let this guy off too light. That could have serious blowback. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't know if they're going to throw the book at him or not. I assume they would. I mean, when I watched the police chief and I watched the DA, I get the impression they laid out some pretty heavy charges. And I get the impression that they plan on, throwing the book at him. So we will see exactly what happens. Now, I understand that the last 2 episodes of the season for the show he's on, they've written him out of the last 2 episodes. So he's not going to be in the last 2 episodes. They've written him out. And, quite honestly, once this case goes to trial, assuming it goes to trial, I'm not 100% sure it will. He's pled not guilty, but, he could change his plea. And he could probably cut a deal. I don't know. The only thing I can think of is his lawyers are going to try to argue he's not guilty based on the fact that he was temporarily insane or temporarily, not right because of his drug addiction. This is probably the only shot they got. It's going to be laughed out of court. I don't think it's going to help him at all. and the jury will probably not appreciate it. The prosecutors certainly will not appreciate it. No one's going to appreciate it because no one's going to buy it. They know it's bullshit. So we'll just keep following the story, and we'll see what happens here. But again, I think that I feel like I'm a victim of Mr. Smollett. I'm sure many of you do as well. And I think that he owes all of us an apology because we were the target. Now, let's move on to the next thing here, which is something I'm not sure who pulled this one out of their hiney, but someone pulled this one out of their hiney, and it's shown up in a couple different places. Big League Politics, Gateway Pundit, Daily Caller, all kind of running the story today about this congressional testimony by Peter's been stroking us and Lisa Page in regards to the insurance policy and their response to what they said when they were asked about the insurance policy. And so we're learning that what they told Congress is that the insurance policy was about whether or not to burn long-standing sources. And I guess the argument that they're making here is that they've got these sources that they've been using, and if they were to use these sources to make their case, which of course they're talking about Trump colluding with Russians, if they were to use these sources to do a prosecution or to bring impeachment or something like that, it would require them to identify the sources. And they're saying that they had to make a decision whether or not there was enough, whether it was worth the risk, whether they should burn or out these sources, be forced to reveal these sources, who have been working with the FBI for a long time and are confidential, trusted sources, and would expect to be working with them in the future. And so they're talking about whether or not they should burn these sources, meaning if they decide to go forward with turning this evidence over to the Congress for impeachment, they're going to have to produce the evidence. And that means they're going to have to produce the sources. And if they do produce the sources, their sources are then done as being FBI confidential informants because they're now outed. So this is what they say that they were talking about. Now, it doesn't make much sense to me because when you look at the context of the conversation that they were having, the conversation was, Trump is horrible. He should lose $1 billion to nothing. What crazy person would vote for Trump? We have to stop Trump. Oh, what about this insurance policy? Oh, well, just in case something happens to you when you're 40, you need a backup plan. So that's what they're referring to is, oh, if we go forward with this case, we have to give up our sources. If we give up our sources, what if we give up our sources, but it's not good enough to impeach Trump? Then we don't get Trump impeached, but we've outed our sources so they can no longer be of use to us. Well, I don't know. It's a very, very... I seriously doubt when I look at the context of the conversation that we're having that their subject of their conversation was their concern for their sources. If you look at the context of the conversation, the subject of their conversation was Trump and what they have to do to keep him from being elected, or why he should never be elected, or how he could never be elected, all these sorts of things. The conversation wasn't about, they're talking about sources and protecting sources, or moving forward with the investigation. Will moving forward mean we have to give up our sources? And none of that was tied. You have to assume a tremendous amount of things, and you have to actually put this conversation into a different context for this to work. So I don't believe this. I think this is pretty much what they probably worked out to say to cover this, because they knew it was coming out. They knew this was coming out. Both their attorneys were given this information before it was made public. And of course they knew they had the conversation and they knew it was coming out. I'm sure Horowitz had already brought up this line of questioning with them as well. So clearly they'd obviously worked out what they thought they were going to say about it. So I don't believe this for a minute. It just doesn't work in the context of what they're saying. It's just a way to try to cover things up. But even if you throw out this term, the insurance policy, let's just throw it completely out and pretend it doesn't exist. Throw it out completely. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's something that they said. It's not so much what they said, it's what they were doing. The fact that we caught them saying these things at the same time they were doing certain things is what makes it more damning. But even without the comment, you could throw the comment out. Because they can argue this in court, they could be sitting in front of a grand jury, and they could throw this out, and you could raise question to it. Just like I just did, about the context and everything else. Okay, so you could just throw it out the window completely. It really has practically zero bearing on the outcome of the plot, because there's so many other things that they were doing, and it's what they were actually doing. And as far as these confidential informants, it's not clear exactly who they're talking about, whether they're talking about Mr. Halper, and I believe it is Mr. Halper they're talking about, but it could also be Mr. Downer. I don't think it's Steele, although it's a possibility, but he was already outed by this time pretty much. And it could even be, as a long shot, it could be Mr. Misford. Although I believe that Mr. Misford is probably closer tied to Clinton State Department people than the FBI. Although it appears that he was in some capacity, and has in some capacity, worked for the FBI before. Or certainly helped them in some way. So it's probably Halper and Downer. It's either Halper or Downer that they're talking about. But both of them have pretty much been outed. I mean, really, we all know Halper and the role he played. There's more to learn about Halper. And of course, we know who Downer is, and we know what role he played as far as with Papadopoulos and passing this information along. But there's probably more to know about him as well. So we will learn eventually more about Halper and Downer. I don't think that they can keep these. You can't uncover this coup and get all the facts out and leave these two guys out of the picture. A lot of things are going to have to come out and be disclosed. And in this particular case, because this was not a legitimate investigation, this was not a legitimate intelligence operation, this was just a flat-out coup against the president. And these guys participated in it. I don't think that they enjoy the same type of protection they would normally have. So I think that that's going to be where this ends up when we finally get to the bottom of this stinking barrel of fish. So anyway, that's just my comments on that. I don't put much stock in this, and it's just funny how this would suddenly surface today, or in this case yesterday. Why it would surface, why this didn't come out months and months and months ago when we were first talking about the insurance policy after Horowitz discovered this conversation. So just that's out there floating around. How many of you saw the video of Diane Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein getting sort of nasty with those kids in her office? So if you haven't seen the clip, just to give you a brief idea, some left-wing activists had a group of about, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so kids, little kids, like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, something like that. And they got to Diane Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein's office, and they were pitching, trying to pressure her on why she's not backing Ocasio, Marty Feldman, Cortez's Green New Deal. So she let them kind of babble for a few minutes about it, and then she, without totally discrediting it, she said, well, I'm a U.S. Senator. I have my own new Green Deal. And she used a word to describe it. Wasn't realistic, but she was saying realistic. She was saying, hey, I have a new green energy deal that's actually realistic. Meaning that Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal is a hoax. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. And but she got very testy with these kids. And the video is out there so you can see it. She got very testy with these kids, and in a way I don't blame her, but it's not what I would have done. But I would have explained to the kids that they unfortunately are being duped, that they are being told lies, and that the Green New Deal is a hoax, and that the Green New Deal is not even possible. It's not even realistic, and that no one in their right mind would sign on to it. There was also an adult there who I guess was their leader, and she was pushing back on Feinstein. And of course, you could see that Feinstein, after about a minute, had all she could take of these people. She had this thing figured out pretty quickly, which is that you had about a group of, sadly, you had a group of 8 or 10, 12 very young kids, like 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old tops, who had been brainwashed and indoctrinated with all this far left environmental wacko crazy stuff, and they were really passionate. They really believe it. It's a shame to look at these kids. They've been used as pawns in this game. They're too young to understand any of the things that they're actually promoting. They don't understand. It's just what's been pumped into their little heads, and it's sad to see an adult manipulating children like this. They shouldn't be using children in this way. And that's what I would have done if it were me. I would have looked at the adult and said, it's really sad that you would manipulate these children the way you are. It's very sad. As an adult, you and I can have this conversation. These kids don't understand anything. You just pump a bunch of garbage into their heads, and that's wrong. As far as you kids, you're getting a bunch of garbage pumped into your heads. This woman's a nut. Her plan won't work. Go ask any realistic person if her plan will work. They'll tell you it won't. The New Green Deal is a hoax. It's a joke. No one in their right mind would suggest doing any of the things that are in the Green New Deal. None of them are even possible. It's a hoax, and you're wasting my time. Thank you very much. That's how I would have handled it. But Feinstein tried to soft shoe it a little bit. At first, she just wanted to let the kids have their say. She wanted to have her say. She was hoping to walk away, but they kept pushing back, and then the adult jumped in and started pushing, and that's when Feinstein got agitated. So I don't really blame her at this point, but you can watch the video. I don't particularly blame Feinstein in this particular case. I think she could have handled it better. I think she got a little testy with the kids without actually. I'm okay with getting testy with the kids, but I would have the most important thing would have been to point out to the kids that they've been hoaxed, that they've been lied to, that they've been manipulated. That's what I would have done. It's a little hardcore, but the truth hurts, and it would have been better to end the indoctrination. Now, she supports, of course, the indoctrination of socialism into these children. It's just that it's real inconvenient for her as a senator to have to sign on to something she knows is a disastrous failure, and most people look at it as being just crazy stuff. So anyway, you can take a look at that video for yourself. It's sad on one hand looking at these brainwashed kids, but it's kind of interesting in another way to watch Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein trying to combat the lefties of her own party. And she realizes where all this is going, as do other Democrats. This is how bad it is. When Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein, and some of these other people, when they begin to look like conservatives, you know that your party has gone way too far to the left. And that's what it looks like. Okay, back to Virginia and the lieutenant governor, this Justin Fairfax. I can't believe this guy is still around, based on the two accusers who are obviously have gone public, made statements and everything else. So it appears now that the rubber has finally met the road, and they have finally set up these hearings, and the two main accusers of Justin Fairfax are going to testify to this House committee in the Virginia Virginia House. So we'll see what happens. It'll be very interesting to see if these two women get the same treatment that all the accusers of Bill Clinton got. And you wonder how that's going to work out. What are the lefties going to do here? Are they going to stand by Fairfax and assault these women and accuse them the same way Juanita Broderick and Paula Jones and all the Clinton accusers? Are they going to treat them like that? Or are they going to side with the women because all women are right, we must listen to them when they make these and believe them when they make these charges? Or are they going to stand with the women? Are the leftists going to side with Fairfax, or are they going to side with his accusers? It's going to be very interesting, because I have a feeling that their testimony is going to be quite compelling. And I also believe that their testimonies are probably going to cause more people to come forward, because my guess is this guy is most people who act this way, it's not just with one or two women. They act this way with just about every woman they meet. These are the type of people these guys are. And we all know guys like that, right? And some of them are harmless and playful, and some of them are just flirts, but some of them are real, actual, abusers. And, you can take your pick where this guy falls in. But I think that these women are going to be viewed fairly credibly when they make their statement. But we'll see how the left-wing media and the Democrats react. Fairfax, in my mind, is a major liability. So we will see exactly what kind of treatment he gets. And it's funny to watch the Democrats being in this position, that this boomerang that they threw out there against Kavanaugh didn't work on Kavanaugh. He's a Supreme Court justice. But that boomerang has come back and it's whacking Democrats one right after the other. It's amazing how many left-wingers, particularly in the media and politics and in Hollywood, who are being taken down by the very boomerang that they threw. Unbelievable. Yeah, it's completely dismissed by them and their allies in the media. Okay, so this bill, some people are concerned about this bill that Madam Botox is going to probably get passed in the House to block Trump's emergency declaration. It might pass the House. I mean, they have enough votes. I'm sure Pelosi can get enough Democrats to stand by it, and they'll probably pass it through the House. But once it gets to the Senate, they would need 4 Republicans to turn. Now, they might be able to get 2, maybe 3. I don't know who the 4th one would be. They might even be able to find 4. But let's just say, for example, that the bill passes the House and then goes to the Senate and even passes there. Doesn't matter. Trump's going to veto the bill. He's not going to sign a bill that blocks his own emergency declaration. It's not going to happen, okay? So what is this? Well, it's politics. That's all it is. It's just pure politics, and that's all the Democrats have got. Remember, everything that they're going to do between now and 2020 is totally election politics. It's about 2020. They understand that the Mueller witch hunt is coming to a swift conclusion. They understand that there is no proof of collusion or anything else. Likely, Trump will not even be mentioned in the Mueller report because there's nothing there to talk about. There really is no obstruction case there. There really is no there, which we've known for 2 years. But they were hoping to ride this train for 4 years. But that's not going to work out. So they're going to try everything from trying to get Trump's tax returns, which they can go ahead and try. But Trump can tie that up in court for 10 years. You want to try to drag someone's tax returns out? Okay, go ahead. That could result in at least a guy like Trump with the money he's got. He could fight this thing in court for 10 years. He'd be long. He could serve 2 terms and be out of office before that ever even reaches resolution. So as far as them trying to get him on the tax returns, they know they can't. They know it'll be tied up in court for years. It's just a way of aggravating Trump. That's all it is. It's just a way of agitating and aggravating. And that's what the next 2 years are going to be. Agitate and aggravate Trump. They know that none of these things are going to fly. They can't get them done, just like they wrote this letter to Barr demanding that Barr give them the full, the full Mueller report with no redactions, nothing taken out. They want the full thing out there. They want it. Congress wants it. The Democratic leaders of the 4 committees in Congress, Nadler and Schiff and all the rest, they all want it. Elijah Cummings, they all want the demanding from Barr. Well, William Barr, he's going to look at that letter and water it up, throw it in the trash can. He doesn't give a damn what the Democrats are demanding. Barr is going to follow the law. He's going to follow the rules. He's going to look at it and say, okay, this is grand jury material. Grand jury material stays secret. The only reason that you would release it is if it's pertinent to something that, it needs to come out. But grand jury findings or even grand jury hearings, information discussed in a grand jury, witness testimony, evidence, all these things, if they don't reach the conclusion of some guilt of somebody being charged with a crime, then you're generally not going to see it. And for a reason. It's to protect people who are innocent. So that they can't be hung by a kangaroo court in a public kangaroo court, which is exactly what the Democrats want to do. And Barr is quite obvious. Barr obviously understands exactly. It's political. So Barr is not going to, like I said, he's going to wad this letter up and throw it in the garbage. He doesn't care. Barr is going to basically look at the report. He's going to put together a summary. He's going to release that summary, and that's what they're going to get. That's what they're going to get. And if they want to harass Barr, they can certainly try to do that. I'm sure he's been through this before. He knows who he's dealing with. Barr's not stupid. So this is going nowhere. None of this stuff is going anywhere. The only thing it's all political. It's for 2020, and it's to be able to keep them in an offensive position to give their allies in the media material to work with. They need something to work with because the Mueller probe's going away. The obstruction isn't going to fly. All these other things have not panned out. So they can talk about Trump's tax returns. They can talk about blocking Trump's executive orders or national emergency. They all know this is bullshit. They can't do any of it. It's just political aggravation, harassment, and things and such. And to feed the media the narratives they need to continue what they're doing. And that's really all there is to it. So don't worry yourselves about any of this. It's all just bullshit. Not worth worrying about. Let's just stay focused on keeping our eyes on the ball, which is the real crimes that we cover here every day on TowerGate. Now, let's go next to Amy Klobuchar. So this story pops out today. Yeah, it's amazing. Whenever you get into a political election season, how these little tidbits, juicy little tidbits, come out on all these people, and they're being leaked and released by their enemies. And this is why I say that, Trump's just going to sit back and watch this play out, as will all of us. And we'll continue to cover these things too, because you're seeing hits on Bernie, you're seeing lots of hits on Bernie this week, lots of hits on Amy Klobuchar, lots of hits on Gillibrand. They're all little hits and dings being launched at all these people, and some of it's coming from Democrat operatives, not Republicans. So now the story comes out yesterday about Klobuchar, because there's all these stories of how she's really nasty to her aides and her staff people. And so now they're telling another story about another staffer telling a story. He's telling his own story. He said he was a staffer for Klobuchar, and that they were at an airport getting on the plane, and she had wanted a salad. So he gets her a salad, but he drops or loses or can't find the plastic silverware, for her to eat the salad with. And they get on the plane, and he finds out that the stewardesses are, we don't have any plastic spoons and knives and forks, because it's like a short flight. It's like a very short flight. So, they only have that kind of stuff on, longer flights. So then he tells Klobuchar, I'm sorry, here's your salad, but I'm sorry, I can't find the plastic fork, knife, and spoon or whatever, and they don't have any on the plane, so I'm sorry. Well, what does she do? Well, apparently she reaches into her purse and pulls out a comb, and she starts eating her salad with her comb. That's gross, man. Starts eating her salad with her comb. That's just, that's kind of, I don't know what to think about that. And then after she gets done, she gives it to her staffer and tells him to clean it. After she chewed his butt for losing the plastic knife, fork, and spoon. So there you go, another ding on Klobuchar. I mean, this is just classic. And this is for the next year, more than a year. This is the type of stuff we're going to get, and it's going to get worse and worse as we go along. Of course, Kamala Harris wants to get rid of Columbus Day with a lot of Democrats. It's been going on for years and years. I've been hearing about they should get rid of Columbus Day. And quite honestly, I don't really care if they get rid of Columbus Day or not. He was a Spaniard. He was a Spaniard. We were told back, 30, 40 years ago that he discovered, the New World. Well, I guess you could say that. I think he originally landed up not in like North America, like where the United States is. I think his original discoveries were down in like the around the islands, like Cuba and places like that, and South America, places like that. So I don't think he was actually here, but he's credited for discovering the New World. But as far as we know now from facts, from truth, that actually the first actual Europeans to come to what we call the United States or America actually were the Nordic people, the Vikings. The Vikings, and that was 500 years before Columbus even set sail. This would have been back in the 1000 A.D., and they first landed up near Canada, north of the United States. They landed up in Canada, and they moved down, and they found themselves in the northeastern parts of what is now the United States. And so, really, if the truth could be told, the Vikings, the Nordic people, actually did first discover this plot of land here. So I guess you could credit the Vikings, but would they prefer to have the Vikings over Columbus? I don't know. You might want to rethink that, Democrats. You might want to rethink that. By the way, I've been telling you that the Democrats will release probably around the end of April, so we'll find out who the Democratic Party's ringer is, who the establishment ringer that they're going to try to put in is going to be. I'm going to go ahead and throw a name out there for you, who I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be Eric Holder. Eric Holder, I think, is going to be the Democrats' ringer for 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.